Welcome back to the channel. Have you ever felt like you are battling the world, but the real battle is happening inside your own chest? And have you ever wondered why the calmest music can sometimes feel more powerful than the loudest motivation? Tonight we are walking a path that many people misunderstand. When they hear words like samurai, they imagine only blades, battles, and toughness. They imagine discipline as hardness, emotion as weakness, and silence as emptiness. But the deeper path, the quieter path, the path that matters for real life, is not about looking fearless. It is about becoming steady. It is about training the mind so it does not turn every moment into a war. It is about learning how to move through difficulty with clarity, how to face pressure with dignity, how to hold power without being poisoned by it. That is why ambient music fits this story so well. It does not shout. It does not chase. It does not demand. It simply stays, like a lantern in fog, and it invites you to become the kind of person who can stay too. Our story begins with someone named Kaitu. Kaitu is young, capable, and restless. From the outside, people think he has it together. He is competent at what he does, quick to learn, sharp in conversation. He can handle responsibilities that others avoid. But inside, Kaitu carries a constant tension, like a string pulled too tight. He does not call it anxiety, because he does not want that label. He calls it ambition. He calls it standards. He calls it being serious about life. In truth, it is a nervous system trained to stay on alert. Kaitu grew up in a home where praise was rare and criticism was frequent. Not always cruel criticism, but constant correction, constant comparison, constant reminders that someone else was doing better. Kaitu learned early that being calm did not earn safety. Being excellent earned safety. And excellence, when used as a survival strategy, becomes exhausting. Because no matter how good you are, there is always a higher bar. And the bar becomes a moving target you can never catch. Kaitu became someone who could win, but could not rest. He would finish at askant instead of feeling satisfaction. He would feel the next pressure. He would receive a compliment and instead of feeling gratitude, he would feel suspicion, like the compliment was temporary. He would enter a room and scan for signs of judgment before anyone even spoke. And at night, when he lay down, his mind would replay the day like a battlefield report, analyzing mistakes, predicting threats, planning improvements. He was not living. He was training for a future that never arrived. One evening, after a long day that was not even a disaster, just an ordinary day with ordinary pressure, Kaitu walked home and noticed something in his body that startled him. His fists were clenched, not because he was carrying anything, not because he was cold, just clenched. He opened his hands and tried to relax them, but they tightened again without his permission. That is when he realized the truth he had been avoiding. His body was fighting even when there was no enemy. He went home, sat in a dim room, and felt the weight of that realization. If I cannot stop fighting, even in peace, then what am I actually protecting? He did what many people do when the mind is too loud. He reached for a screen. He scrolled. He watched clips. He tried to distract himself, but the distraction did not soothe him. It only added noise. The more he consumed, the more restless he became. The nervous system did not want more stimulation. It wanted safety. He remembered something an older mentor once told him, a sentence that sounded simple but stayed in his mind. Real strength is being able to return. Return to what? Kaitu did not know. He only knew he was far from whatever it was. That night, he searched for something different. Not hype, not advice, not a voice telling him what to do. He searched for ambient music, something connected to the path of discipline and calm. He found a long track described as Japanese ambient music on the path of the warrior. He pressed play. The sound arrived like fog over a quiet field. Slow tones, spacious silence between notes, a feeling of distance, as if the music was not trying to pull him into it but was offering him room to breathe. Kaito almost turned it off immediately. His mind judged it. Too empty. Too soft. That judgment was the first lesson. His nervous system was addicted to intensity. He had trained himself to believe that only urgency is real. So when calm arrived, it felt suspicious, like a trap, like vulnerability. He stayed anyway. Not because he suddenly became wise, but because he was tired of his own noise. As he listened, his thoughts did not stop. They multiplied. The mind said, "This is pointless." The mind said, "You are wasting time." The mind said, "You should be planning tomorrow." The mind said, "You are falling behind." But underneath those thoughts, something else began to happen. His breath slowed by itself. The chest loosened slightly. The shoulders dropped a fraction. It was not dramatic, but it was real. Then a wave of emotion rose. Quiet and surprising. It was not sadness exactly. It was something like grief mixed with relief. Grief for how long he had been hard on himself. Relief that for a few minutes he did not have to perform. He felt tears gather and he hated it. He felt ashamed. He tried to swallow it. But the ambient tones continued, steady and indifferent to his pride. They did not judge him for feeling. They did not demand that he be strong in the way he had learned its strength. He let one tear fall. That single tear was more honest than 100 victories. He sat through the entire track, not perfectly focused, not perfectly calm, but present enough to notice something important. The mind fights because it thinks fighting prevents pain. But the fighting is pain. That is where the deeper theme of this story begins. The theme that ties discipline to compassion and wisdom to destiny. Kaito began listening nightly. Not because he believed the music was magic, but because it became a ritual. A ritual is a message to the nervous system. We are safe now. We can lower the guard. We can stop scanning. We can return. The first week was uncomfortable. Calm felt like boredom. Boredom felt like weakness. Weakness felt like danger. This chain of associations had been built over years. It did not dissolve in one night, but each night he practiced. He was rewriting the chain. Calm can be safe. Boredom can be space. Space can be freedom. During the day, Kaito began noticing how often he created wars that did not exist. Someone would speak a neutral sentence and he would hear criticism. A colleague would be busy and he would interpret it as rejection. A small mistake would happen and he would treat it like proof that he was failing at life. His mind was a weapon pointed inward. Seeing that was painful. But seeing is wisdom. Wisdom hurts at first because it removes the fantasy that you are fine. As his awareness grew, he started asking questions that changed the direction of his life. Why do I need to be perfect to feel safe? Who taught me that rest is dangerous? What am I afraid will happen if I stop pushing? These questions were not intellectual gain. They were a kind of inner training, similar to the way a disciplined path trains the body. But here, the training was in honesty. One night, while the ambient music played, he remembered a childhood moment. He was young, proud of a small achievement. Holding it like a treasure, he brought it to an adult, expecting warmth. The adult glanced and said, "Good, but why not better?" The child smiled awkwardly, pretending it did not hurt. In that moment, the child learned a silent vow. I will be better so I do not feel this again. That vow became his destiny for years. In the language of karma, this is how momentum forms. A painful moment becomes a belief. The belief becomes a habit. The habit becomes a personality. The personality becomes the life you keep creating. Kaito realized his strictness was not only discipline. It was fear wearing armor. Now compassion entered, not as a soft idea, but as a practical necessity. Because if you try to change fear with more harshness, you only reinforce fear. Harshness is fear in disguise. So Kaito began practicing a new kind of discipline. Not the discipline of punishing himself, but the discipline of returning. Every time the mind launched into self-attack, he practiced one breath, one slow exhale, not to erase the thought, but to create space around it. Every time he felt the urge to overwork to prove his worth, he asked, "Is this true effort or fear effort?" Every time he felt the urge to control everything, he asked, "What happens if I let one small thing be imperfect and still survive?" These were small experiments, but small experiments repeated become new karma. One day, an incident tested him. A project went wrong. Not catastrophic, but embarrassing. Old Kai too would have turned it into war. He would have blamed someone or blamed himself. And either way, the nervous system would have burned for days. This time, he felt the heat rise, the chest tighten, the mind preparing its weapon. Then he remembered the music, the spaciances between notes. He paused. He said, "We made a mistake. Here is what we will do next." No humiliation, no drama, no performance. Afterward, a co-worker said, "You were calm." How? Kai did not know how to explain it fully. He only said, "I am practicing not turning everything into a fight." That is wisdom. And wisdom is often quiet. As his inner war softened, he began noticing a different kind of power. Not power over others, but power over reflex. Most suffering comes from reflex. Reflex says attack, defend, run, hide. Wisdom says breathe, see, choose. This is where the samurai theme becomes real in modern life. The true warrior is not the person who looks intimidating. The true warrior is the person who can remain steady when the mind wants to panic. But steadiness is not coldness. This is important. Some people confuse discipline with emotional numbness. They try to become hard so nothing touches them. But that is not freedom. That is a different prison. The music helped Kai to become steady while still feeling. And feeling, when held with awareness, becomes compassion. He began noticing other people's hidden battles. A friend who joked too much was hiding sadness. A colleague who snapped was overwhelmed. A family member who criticized was insecure. Seeing this did not mean accepting mistreatment. Boundaries still mattered, but he stopped meeting every sharp moment with more sharpness. This changed his relationships. He apologized more easily. Not because he was weak, but because he was not addicted to being right. He listened more deeply. Not because he was trying to be nice, but because he could finally make space. He rested more. Not because he stopped caring, but because he realized exhaustion is not devotion. This is a profound karmic shift. When your nervous system is less threatened, you create less suffering around you. Your calm becomes a gift, not only to you but to anyone who shares a room with you. But the story still has another layer. The layer about destiny. Kai used to believe destiny was achieved through force. Push hard, win. He believed life rewarded the most intense person. Then he began seeing another kind of destiny. A destiny shaped by consistency and character. When he was calmer, he made fewer impulsive mistakes. When he made fewer mistakes, he built trust. When he built trust, opportunities arrived. Not magical, not sudden, but natural. People want to work with someone steady. People feel safe with someone who does not explode. People respect someone who can face difficulty without turning it into theater. In other words, his inner practice changed his outer future. That is the real meaning of shaping destiny. You do not control everything. You cannot prevent every storm. But you can cultivate a mind that does not become the storm. Now let us talk about the role of ambient music in this practice. Because it is not just background sound. The slow, spacious quality trains your system to tolerate stillness. Stillness is not empty. Stillness is where you can actually hear yourself. But many people fear hearing themselves because what they hear is pain. Kai learned to sit with pain without becoming it. When sadness rose, he let it rise. When anger rose, he let it rise. When fear rose, he let it rise. He did not act it out. He did not shove it down. He held it like a disciplined person holds a heavy object. steadily, without throwing it at someone. This is emotional mastery, and it is far more rare than looking confident. At some point, Kai began combining the music with a simple inner phrase, not a fancy prayer, just a practical reminder. Return to breath, return to posture, return to the present moment, return to what is actually happening rather than the story the mind is building. Return is a form of awakening. Awakening is not being high above life. Awakening is being here without being owned by reflex. One night, he had a dream that felt like a teaching. In the dream, he was walking on a narrow path through a forest. On both sides were shadows shouting insults and doubt. He tried to fight them, but the more he fought, the more they multiplied. Then he noticed a small stream beside the path. He listened to it. The stream did not argue with shadows. It just flowed. Kai sat beside it, and the shouting faded into background noise. The shadows still existed, but they lost authority. When he woke, he understood. The stream was not defeating the shadows. It was refusing to be pulled into them. That is the heart of the samurai path in a modern mind. You do not win by escalating. You win by staying. Now I want to share a reflection that many people experience when they begin a calm discipline practice. At first, calm feels uncomfortable because you finally notice how tired you are. That is not failure. That is awareness. At first, stillness feels boring because your system has been trained to crave intensity. That is not failure. That is withdrawal. At first, emotions rise because you have been suppressing them. That is not failure. That is release. So if you try a calm ritual and it feels strange, do not panic. The strangeness is a sign that you are meeting your true state. Kai eventually became someone different, but not in the way people imagine. He did not become a person with no stress. He became a person with a different relationship to stress. Stress became information instead of identity. Pressure became a signal instead of a sentence. When someone asked him later, "What changed you?" he did not say music changed me. He said, "I stopped treating my mind like an enemy. I stopped using discipline as punishment. I started using discipline as return." That sentence carries the whole teaching. Because some people use discipline to become harsh. Others use discipline to become free. Harsh discipline creates a life that looks impressive and feels miserable. Free discipline creates a life that looks ordinary and feels peaceful. Now let me bring this story closer to you. You might not call your life a battlefield, but if you are constantly tense, constantly scanning, constantly comparing, constantly rushing, then you are living in a silent war. The question is not whether you are strong. You already are, because you have survived. The question is whether your strength is serving you or hurting you. Try this practice tonight. Even once. Choose a calm ambient track. Let it play. Let the mind complain. Do not argue with the mind. Just return to listening. Notice the breath. Notice the shoulders. Notice the jaw. Soften one muscle. If emotion rises, let it move. If boredom appears, let it be there. Boredom is not a threat. It is space. Then, tomorrow, notice whether you have a slightly longer pause before reacting. Notice whether your chest feels 1% softer. Notice whether you can hear your own thoughts without obeying them. 1% is not small. 1% repeated becomes transformation. This is how karma changes. Not through dramatic declarations, but through steady practice. This is how wisdom grows. Not through lectures, but through seeing. This is how compassion becomes real. Not through slogan, but through how you treat your own nervous system when it is struggling. As we close, I want you to reflect on one question. Where in your life are you winning on the outside while losing on the inside? If you can answer that honestly, you are already stepping onto a deeper path. Now it is your turn. In the comments, tell me what helps you return. Is it music, breathing, journaling, prayer, or quiet sitting? And when you feel the inner war starting, What would it look like to choose return instead of escalation? If you want to support this channel, please subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment so more people can find a calm path through modern pressure. Closing words for tonight. May your mind become steady. May your heart stay soft. May your discipline be compassionate. May your wisdom be practical. May your actions plant good karma. And may your destiny be shaped not by endless fighting, but by the quiet power of return.